Let's another huge story this week, and I love how England press covers things. 66-year-old white male arrested for various lewd acts or whatever exactly it
Yeah.
was, and then of course the BBC and everybody else made it clear it was former Prince Andrew
Yes.
arrested for things he was accused of doing or he's on the Epstein list, a lot of bad things, Pedo Island. We've heard a lot about this, but Grant, it seems like the international community is now getting involved, and that could spell big, big problems for President Trump.
Right. There are like 9 other countries that have the full Epstein files. It's not just us, because Epstein had places all over the world and visited places all over the world. His island, as you and I found out before we started rolling here, is on St. Bart's that, and that's owned by France. It's a French territory. So, Epstein Island was not an American island. So we don't really have jurisdiction over that. I shouldn't say really, we don't have jurisdiction over that. So what we saw, and the big ones are in Britain, because what might actually be happening there outside of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is another guy who was a high-up official in the current government in Britain. Mendelsohn is his last name, and he was the ambassador to the United States. There are pictures of him in the Oval Office with Trump earlier this last year. And Mendelsohn was thrown out in disgrace, and it's so bad, the blowback there, that the current prime minister may have to resign. That it might topple this guy's government for one dude being in the Epstein files, without conviction either, which is insane.
Juxtapose that also against the statement from Prince Charles, who was deadly serious about this investigation involving his own brother.
Yes, into his own brother. Said, yeah, like, I fully allowed them to go arrest my brother. Like, we knew these things about him. I mean, it's been well known for a long time that former Prince Andrew was a very close friend of Jeffrey Epstein's, and that there are lots of pictures that are, honestly, given the photos that are in the Epstein files, the pictures of Andrew with some of these girls are somehow less incriminating than some of the things that we have seen other people involved in, including the President of the United States. And the really interesting thing here, and I think the reason that we're talking about this, is that what's happening in Britain and then the knock-on effect in Germany, there are likely more investigations coming as well, which we can talk about. But it is that we were told in no uncertain terms by the FBI Director, Kash Patel, by the Assistant Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. For those last two were both personal attorneys to the president before they were a part of his government. That nobody was going to be arrested for these. They couldn't even open investigations into these other men. That was the exact words that Pam Bondi used in front of Congress. And these other nations are proving them wrong. And that is, it's a real egg on their face, and it really shows that there is clearly I don't think we can prove a cover-up, because that it needs motive for that. But we can say that there is clearly some sort of, at best, disconnect, at worst, willful ignoring of what's in these files by our federal law enforcement. And it just happens that, though not investigating these things protects the president.
Could it be that countries who have been impacted by President Trump's tariffs basically use this against him, and that they're providing evidence essentially makes the case for a cover-up?
That's possible that they want to retaliate, but the nations that Trump put tariffs on are sort of like shrugging their shoulders a little bit, because they're trading with other people. They're trading with amongst themselves. The bonds for trade in Europe are getting increasingly stronger. Their talks about military working together is getting stronger. And we are paying the tariffs, American consumers and American companies. The New York Fed just came out with a report last week that said American consumers and firms or businesses are paying 90% of the tariffs, which given the amount of money that we have, like, quote unquote, brought in because of the tariffs, it's like something like $175 billion that we've been paying out of our pocket for the tariffs. So it's, I don't know if foreign countries are going to try to like slip evidence to somebody because of the tariffs, but I do think that they might end up working with someone like the UN, who said this week that because of these files, it appears very likely that what was happening under Jeffrey Epstein was a global criminal network in which the UN does police. And so does the International Criminal Court. And I would not be surprised if you saw someone like Britain or like Germany specifically work with France as well, but like work with an International Criminal Court, special prosecutor or just general prosecutor or the UN Human Rights Council to build a case about a potential cover-up, because while Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Kash Patel wouldn't be a part of the actual physical network of Jeffrey Epstein, though there is some history with Pam Bondi in Florida while Epstein was alive and working, we'll say, in Florida, that needs some explaining from Pam Bondi. They certainly are involved in not exposing this, what the UN is calling a global criminal network. And so they could be implicated in this. And that leads to a very odd territory, in which we could see a president in that scenario, an American president, be charged with crimes against humanity, which would, we would be through several looking glasses at that point. And that's not a far-fetched scenario, but it is a little beyond the breach.
Right.
I want to be clear.
And I mean, is there any precedent for this? Like,
no. As all things with this administration, we are in unprecedented territory, no matter which direction you step. And part of this is that we're in unprecedented territory because we have never uncovered a global criminal network at this level with this many elites. This could be the end of the monarchy in Britain because of this. It could wind up being that Charles has to dissolve the monarchy in order to prevent an actual criminal case being brought against the House of Windsor for what people in the royal family knew about what Andrew was doing, or was accused of doing, I should say, when he was doing it. Like, that's not off the table here. And so, like, all of this is just wildly unprecedented, and as is so much of international criminal law. So that's also makes all of this really tricky.
I go back to 2016 when I first, remember Pizzagate and conspiracy theories like this, where you would hear people on Facebook or whatnot say, there's just this whole global conspiracy of pedo elites. And I'm like, hold on, do they get the last laugh? I mean, it's not funny, but are they being proven true?
I think they're being proven for pointing in the right direction. I don't think true is the right way to say it. Because a lot of these people only meant it if it was a global cabal of people who did not vote the way they did.
Right, Bill Clinton and Hillary.
Right, exactly. It's Hillary drinking adrenochrome out of a toddler's skull or whatever, right? Like it's that kind of a thing. Now, they were pointing in the right direction. They just, as soon as they realized what they were pointing at, they all covered their eyes. And part of that, too, is that there's some evidence in the Epstein files to suggest that, like, Jeffrey Epstein himself might have helped orchestrate some of this far-right online network as a way to, like, direct opinion away from what he was doing. That's, and like, at the beginning, and then it sort of blossoms out into what ends up being QAnon. But I think it is fair to point out, not that we should expect logical consistency from QAnon, but we should point out that where are those people now who shouted for years? Where are the people, even just in the 2024 election, who demanded that these files be released because they were certain there was a Democratic-led or liberal-led pedophilic elite that worst was, or at best was just that, and at worst they were actually a Satan worshiping cannibalistic cabal, which is like an insane thing.
Right.
And like, yeah, I understand that people are trying to make the case that that was also happening with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, I've not read obviously all 3 million pages of this stuff, but like, you got to push pretty hard to get to that stuff. And that's a that's a real big accusation. Let's be really clear. But
Right.
like, and there's enough in there where like I think okay, but like, where are the QAnon people in this moment? Where did they go? Or were all those people just disingenuous? And were they, much like Jesse Waters on Fox News, fully capable of, or I should say, are they now fully capable of ignoring everything they said before and saying that actually Jeffrey Epstein was just a guy who could get you a girl, which is a pimp, by the way, but like, still, uh, I agree that like those people are going to need to answer for some of these things, and
Right.
especially if they are people in power who said these things publicly. And we, as you and I as journalists and as the public writ large, are going to need to demand a little more credulity from those people for them to be believed going forward. And I think that is a real broader fallout from the Epstein files that is one step removed from the actual criminality of this and what happens to the president and what happens in criminal courts, international courts. It's that there are a lot of people with a lot of power who lied to us for a long time and who are going to continue to ask us to believe the things that they say. And it will be shame on the rest of us to not be like, no, you need to prove more because you lied for so long.
Mhm.
And I think that's a conversation that we are maybe unwilling to have because as Americans, we're not great at that kind of a thing, but it is worth talking about.
Well, it's the UN and the International Criminal Court's time in the spotlight here, and we'll
Yes.
see what happens with that investigation.